Now let's pivot to the ethics of using drones in combat and how it works in the real world. I'm joined now from Atlanta by Christine Fair. She's an associate professor with a security studies program at Georgetown University and has worked for the United Nations in Kabul. Let me talk to you about the ethics of drone strikes, accountability. A lot of people see it as antiseptic engineering exercises. What are the impacts of this?
So I just reject that characterization of drone warfare altogether. I think the piece that you opened with really characterized this accurately. You get much more intelligence, much more accurate visibility of the target through the drone program than you do with a traditional aircraft. The example that I like to give, compare the intelligence-led operations that the U.S. can conduct with drones to say when you have troops in contact, in Afghanistan, when they come under fire, they're firing wherever they feel is the direction from which they're taking fire. So I think you could very clearly understand that the drone strikes are far more precise in terms of who they're actually eliminating than even the so-called soldier on the ground. So I think there's entirely too much obsession with the platform. The RPA is simply a platform with which the United States can deliver munitions. And if you actually care about ethics, you could actually make the argument that we should only be using RPAs as the platform to conduct warfare.
So you cite the precision. What about oversight of drone strikes just to make sure that they are hitting the right targets?
So this is, for people like me, I think this is the most important thing. There's actually, generally speaking, two kinds of drone operations. One is what we would call an overt mission, the kind of drone mission that you'll see flown in Afghanistan, drone missions targeting Daesh. These are DoD-led missions, and you can actually talk about those missions, who's targeted and with what outcome. We have a very different situation in Pakistan, and those drone missions are covert. And this means that it is absolutely illegal to talk about any particular drone mission. This means that it's illegal to say who was targeted. It's illegal to say the outcome of that drone strike. And many people actually believe that this is because of the United States. That actually isn't the case at all. The particular nature of these drone operations in Pakistan are so because the Pakistanis requested them to be this way. In some sense, the Pakistanis are free riders. They want the drones because the drones can more effectively take out the terrorists that they cannot, but they don't want to take any of the responsibility and any of the domestic criticism that would fly back. So I've actually been quite an opponent of this arrangement. I think if we're going to continue to conduct these drone strikes in Pakistan, Pakistan's role must be public. They cannot continue to free ride off of us in this way.
Christine, I've been reading about the high rates of PTSD among the drone pilots. I mean, suicidal thoughts, anxiety disorders, substance abuse, some of the issues that they're facing. During the day, they're in those pilot trailers, they're carrying out attacks. Then at night, they go home to their families. It's this weird mixture that you don't normally see when you're in a theater, a military theater. How tough is it to balance that? And is that one of the big problems?
So I actually have the privilege of knowing drone pilots, and actually that is very much the case. So a traditional fighter pilot is going to be deployed to theater. He or she is going to come back to the base, and there will be an environment where everyone understands the nature of the battle space. And interestingly enough, this argument that drone pilots don't experience any risk, actually speaking, your traditional F-16 pilot, the most important risk that pilot faces is actually due to aircraft malfunction, not from enemy fire. But when that pilot comes back to base, there's a camaraderie. They understand what's going on. And when they redeploy back home, there is a process of reintegrating back into their family structure. The issues with the drone pilots, and I'm really exhausted with the characterization of this as video warfare, video games. I don't think people quite appreciate the graphic nature with which drone pilots engage in their targets. For example, a very common thing that some of the drone pilots that I've had the privilege of knowing will say, there's a classified time difference between when they release the ordnance and actually when the ordnance hits the target. And it's not unheard of that even though when they release the ordinance, the only person that's likely to be eliminated are the targets, but many will talk about children running in to the target set, and there's nothing they can do. They can't recall the ordinance. And of course, they have to sit there and they have to watch this child die. And unlike a conventional pilot that's deployed to the battle space, they go home to a spouse. They have to do math, they have to mow the lawn, they have to fold laundry, they have to cook dinner, and they can't talk about what they've experienced. So I think and I think the other issue is the denying in the public space that drone pilots experience PTSD. So this is an additional victimization in terms of what these pilots are experiencing. It's very similar to my female colleagues and friends that have deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, and they come back with PTSD, and people will say, how can you have PTSD? You're a female, you didn't see combat. It's a completely a horrific misunderstanding of what PTSD is and how PTSD affects the person who suffers it.
Christine, briefly, if you can, we've run out of time, so I don't have time for another question. I apologize for that. Fascinating subject to talk about, though, and I appreciate you joining us from Atlanta.